and it is February the 20th, 6:01 p.m. here on the west coast of the United States of America. Well, today we're starting a bit late. Instead of starting at 1 p.m. West Coast time, we decided to start at 6. Now, there's a number of reasons for that. I don't want to go into it, but it's also the fact that I get to try this out at 6 p.m. and see what it looks like. If it goes well, and if you guys are actually okay with it, we might actually go ahead and change it up and have us stream on Mondays at 6 p.m. at the very least. Okay, at the very least, we can do Mondays at 6 p.m. And if we want to add more stream times, multiple times a day, maybe we can do 5 o'clock. That'll give me my, morning to night free, and then we'll get to do that. Streaming midday, by the way, is quite a bit of work, considering that it happens in the middle of the day. So, drop a comment. Let us know what's going on, where you're joining us from. Hit that like button. I got some awesome stuff I want to announce to you guys. Very excited because something just arrived, but it arrived too late for me to be able to set it up properly, even though it's sort of set up, but it's not set up enough where I can actually use it. So, what's up, brother? How you doing? What's up with you? You wrote, have a safe flight, Jerome. I don't see any comments from Jerome because I wanted to talk to him about that Liverpool game from Saturday. With him having to come up on our stream, and if it so happens, apologize. But long season to go. He thought Liverpool were going to get crushed by Newcastle, but didn't seem like it. I figured out how to stop streaming on the other. Man, I was watching so many training videos yesterday about the software that I use because there's been an update, and I'm just trying to learn it to make our streams a lot better. And that's one of the things that ended up happening from that. Is we have been able to purchase the Stream Deck has been added to our inventory of products that we use to make our streams a lot better. So, and that's the thing that's not set up just yet. Again, it's set up enough where I hit go live and it went live, but not set up enough where I can do all the fun stuff. Camera changes, all sorts of crazy stuff. So, why don't you guys tell me, guys, seriously, where you are joining from? I'm enjoying this so far, this later night sort of. Late night is crazy, like 9 p.m. is nuts. 6 p.m., 5 p.m., I think I can manage that. What's up, Armando? How you doing, man? So he was in here before we started, was saying you were starting, but he was getting on a plane. Well, safe flight to him, safe flight to Jerome. Hopefully we'll connect with him. I think he's going on his way to England. So we're global, guys. We're global. And if you're not convinced that we're global, here we have our good friend Ashley joining us from a farmland in Mississippi, enjoying the good life. Jerome is in the sky. And Rafi says, hey, Arthur, watching from Sydney, Australia. Rafi, you might just be the furthest out friend of the channel that we have, that you are in Australia. So welcome. Appreciate it. So yeah, we're going to go about this the way we usually go about it, which is we do a live Q&A. And we might have some people joining us that don't usually join us because we stream midday, and they can't, but they're able to to join us later in the day, which is, again, if that's the case, welcome. Thanks for being here. I figured out, by the way, a really, really cool way to bring in video without even needing the iPad. Even though I have the iPad here, I really enjoyed having the ability to scribble stuff on the screen, and I think I'll put that together properly. But found definitely a better way, and I think it's like cleaner in regards to the way it looks. So let me know what we're talking about, guys. Remember, this is the live Q&A, and we're going with that. What are you guys thinking about? What have you been considering? It's around 9 p.m. here in Indiana. So we got Mississippi, Indiana. We got West Coast, East Coast. We got folks from Australia, folks who are in the sky who will land in England. You guys, I'm telling you, some serious business. We have folks joining from all over the world. That is just phenomenal, man. I sometimes it's hard for me to wrap my head around that. Right? I can sit here on this semi-comfortable chair. It's not like the most comfortable, but it's not the worst chair I've ever used, right? And be able to talk to you guys and interact with you guys. So I love that. We're changing some stuff around in regards to monitoring. My mic is coming at me from a different direction, so I got to get used to that. It might be dinner time. Oh, I know I forgot to do something. Might be dinner time for some of y'all. No, it is dinner time for some of you guys on the West Coast. Unless you're eating really, really late dinner. Let's see. I forgot to share my stream in a number of important places. Part of it was because we arrived home late. I put in the order for this thing, and it's supposed to come with a complimentary cover, and they didn't have it, and so we had to wait. Still, they didn't have it. Rafi says, how should we prepare for Lent when you have a medical condition? That's a really good question. Look, I think there's it's virtually impossible for people to I have friends, and that's who I'm talking about, who I'm thinking about when I'm saying this, that it's virtually impossible for them to prepare themselves or to have the ability to fast. Right, it's actually bad for them. So I would say this is not a rule in Scripture. So Lent, even like we're called to fast, but we're not given like when, how much, and all that stuff, right? We have a great deal of freedom in the way we go about that. So I would say if you have a health condition, maybe it might be the case that you might want to fast from other things. One of the things in recent times, obviously, that I've seen, and I've actually practiced this in my life, is fasting from social media. That's actually like a lot more difficult than people think it is. But I would say if you have a medical condition, just don't do it. Or if you have a medical condition, just do it on the stuff that you can actually you can fast from. Those things. I don't think in any way that God is looking at saying, X, Y, and Z. because I don't think that idea of even Lent, the way we understand it, and that's part of the church calendar, is biblical in that sense, right? It's not commanded in Scripture. It's something that's probably very good for you, but that doesn't mean if you don't do it, you're in sin or something like that. Okay. How do you answer super hostile skeptics about the topic of interpretation and giving a solid answer about the reality of some Christians being wrong on things they say is clearly written? I think it's pretty commonsensical that everybody understands all literature has to be interpreted. Any kind of literature we look at, we go through a interpretation. Now, a lot of literature that we read, we don't even realize that we're doing interpreting, but we are. But the reason we don't realize we're doing the interpreting is because it's so close to our culture. It's so close to the things that we're going through. So I would just explain, hey, here's a book. I'll just pick any book. And there's a number of things you might want to know about the author. There's a number of things you might want to know about if you have access to information like why he wrote whatever it was that he wrote, or she. And then explain to them that this is exactly what you're doing when it comes to the Bible, and that everything you do is interpretation. Like me speaking to you guys, there's an interpretive process that's taken place, right? Linguistically, socioeconomically, just there's all sorts of factors that come into it that help you understand what I'm talking about. And so that's like when skeptics, people who are hostile skeptics, that's how I would try to explain it to them. That now I'm trying to understand the second aspect. How do you answer super hostile skeptics about the topic of interpretation and giving a solid answer about the reality of some Christians being wrong? Well, then you would, the burden of proof, I think in this case is probably on you to go to a certain extent, at least, maybe not fully, but to show like why whatever they think is clearly written is not clearly written. Okay. Like, for example, if somebody says, hey, this passage in the Bible is clearly written, you might want to look around that same passage and find things that contradict what they're saying. I'll give you an example here. Let me pull it up, actually. Or at least their application of it. I've messed around with my software quite a bit. So yesterday when I was trying to rearrange things, so some stuff might just like do crazy stuff, guys. Excuse me if that happens. I am a mere human. Let's go to... Okay. And okay, that's good. That's good. We got nice. Here we go. Okay, so here's a favorite passage of mine that gets regularly, thrown into my face. So the Bible very clearly teaches, right? You shall not make any cuts on your body for the dead or tattoo yourselves. So usually they forget this passage and then they'll go, doesn't the Bible say you shouldn't be tattooing yourselves? So yes, it does. It does say that. Well, it's clearly written. Why do you get any tattoos? And I would say, okay, great question. Now, let's just say we're going to take this literally and apply it. I'm just talking to those Christians, right? You're doing this to show that they don't really believe what they're saying. That's it. Now, some of them might. And you go, okay, cool. If you do, then you do. And then we'll ask another question of whether we're supposed to even keep these sorts of commands. So I think I like that more. So you go, cool. It's clearly written. I go, yes, it is clearly written. That's verse 28. But verse 27 is also very clearly written right before it. And verse 27 very clearly says, you shall not round off the hair on your temples or mar the edges of your beard. So then I ask these people, why do you not keep a beard? Usually the people telling me you shouldn't get tattoos are people who don't have beards. Very interesting, huh? But it's that sort of kind of older crowd, right? It's that sort of older mindset, you could say, where they're like, this is what it says, you shouldn't do that. It's like, but then they don't have beards. And it's like, well, it's telling you that you can't shave your beard. So why are you thinking the verse right before it is cultural, but the verse right after it is not cultural? So you present a hermeneutical kind of conundrum for them, and then say, look, you and I both agree just because something is very clearly written, that it could be interpreted differently based on your theological views, based upon further revelation that we get in the Bible, based on X, Y, and Z. Like that would be the way I would go about it, Ashley, just to explain to the individual in front of me. And most of the time, I think people get that. At least in my experience, most of the time people get that. Okay. What's up, Tom? How you doing, man? Okay. It's a good question. If nobody's asking any more questions, I'd like to know your ideas about theodicy. One of those extremely simple questions to, answer. I want to read a proper definition of theodicy here somewhere. Let me. Just so we're all okay. Encyclopedia Britannica, I'll click on that. Because there are different types of theodicy, okay? I'm sure you know this, but some might not. That's why I want to do it. Definitions are always a good thing, right? Here we go. You can say that theodicy is a justification, or not like a, I guess justification of God, or trying to justify God. But theodicy, from the Greek theos, God, dike, which means justice, explanation of why a powerful God, almighty and all-knowing, permits evil. The term literally means justifying God. Although many forms of theodicy have been proposed, some Christian thinkers have rejected as impious any attempt to fathom God's purposes or to judge God's actions by human sense. Interesting that it just says some Christians. Theodicy would be an issue for any religion, by the way, but that they wouldn't need to do. Here we go. Or to judge God's actions by human standards. Others, drawing a distinction between a theodicy and a more limited defense, have sought to show only that the existence of some evil in the world is logically compatible with God's omnipotence. It's probably where I would stand. Theodicies and defenses are two forms of responses to what is known in theology and philosophy as the problem of evil. Most of the time, this comes in that sort of an idea, right? In regards to, let's close that. In regards to, why is... the problem of evil. Look, I think God allows for there to be evil. I think that's very clear. Why would God allow for there to be evil? I mean, ultimately speaking, I would give some sort. Here's the sort of defense I would give. That I think I spoke about this last time. I think this is the best possible world in which the most amount of people would freely come to know God the way that God ought to be known. Like to know him as redemptive. And when I say the word know, I don't just mean that like intellectually. Like to experience his redemption. I don't think we would have the possibility of experiencing the redemption of God unless there was evil in the world. And so I think that answers the question as to why God would even give free will to humanity, why God, knowing that they're going to sin, would even create a world in which they were going to sin. All of that, I think, gets answered when you factor that in. To clarify, I take the strong version of the problem of evil as valid. I don't see a logical problem with God accomplishing his goals without undesirable states of affairs. I think didn't we speak about this a couple of weeks ago? You mean the strong version of the logical problem of evil? I think we spoke about this. You know what I just realized I forgot? My water. So I'm realizing how much I need water. I'm drinking coffee, which is not always a good thing when you need water. No problem, Ashley. Yeah, I think we spoke about this quite a bit. Well, a little bit. Yeah, that's quite a bit. But yeah, so specifically, I mean, if you have a specific question, then maybe we can address that instead of me having to restate kind of my position on this. I haven't been drinking enough water. Some of my friends are angry at me for not drinking enough water. This is one of those weeks where I'm going to be doing a lot of talking. So, got to take care of stuff. What's up? What's up, brother? Evil happens when one is in self and not in God's will. You have the power of choice. God is good. Man is evil by nature. Evil is flesh and humanity outside of God's will. Look, one of the important things to understand here is that God, knowing full well that human beings were going to sin and do wrong, still ended up creating them. It's always going to take you back there, right? Because if you say, well, what you just said, which I would agree with, I might formulate it a little differently, but I would agree with. The response is going to be, so why create a world in which there is that. So, like, why is that the case? Why are you doing all this evil? Well, because of sin. Sin entered the world. Well, why did sin enter the world? Well, because Adam and Eve sinned, let's just say, right? Well, why did God still create them knowing that they were going to sin? That's what it's going to come down to. So you need to have an answer as to why God would do that in the first place. And I think this is a legitimate point raised by the unbelievers. We need to have some kind of a system where we answer questions of this from. Like, we can't just ignore it. We can't just go, oh, stop asking tough questions, atheists. I'm not saying you're doing that, but some might. Sorry, I'm messing around here as I'm talking to you guys. Let's see what the best. It's always good to test whatever it is that you're doing live on air, so you actually know what it's going to be. Hey, what's up, everybody? We got more folks joining us. Thank you for joining us. Just go ahead and drop a like. Let us know where you're joining us from. Again, this is not a usual stream. We don't usually go live at 6 p.m. here on the West Coast, but we are today. So there might be some of you guys in here who aren't regulars. So we want to say hi to you and acknowledge you. Yeah, so is there a plan and purpose behind God's allowing for evil? Yeah, I would absolutely say there is. I mean, to say that there isn't would be a huge problem in regards to our view of God. Or like God being intelligent. I don't think God does anything by happenstance or accident or something like that. I think God is premeditated, if you would want to use that kind of language, in regards to the stuff that he does. So there would have to be a plan. If it's completely arbitrary and there's no plan, if there's no like reason and purpose as to why God allows evil, then I would call into question God's moral nature. So yeah, there would have to be one. Arnold says, hey, why so late? We had a family thing today that we had to be at. And I said, you know what, let me stream later and then see how that even works. Maybe it might work better. A 6 p.m. stream might be better than a midday stream. Not that I'm going to get rid of the midday streams, but it might potentially be the case where we plan on having at least Mondays later. Mondays, that's actually going to be pretty I'm just realizing that, like, whether I would, I'd have to move a bunch of stuff around. My son has practice on Mondays. I'd probably have to skip that if I were to do this. So, but it seems pretty even in regards to that. That's why I'm asking people to drop comments, because I want to see if it's the same people that are joining live or we got a whole new set of people. Actually, before I answer this, let me go back here. Fair enough. I guess if it isn't the best possible world, then it wouldn't make sense to call God perfect. That's pretty much why I'm an atheist, though. I don't think a perfect being would do this. So it seems to me that that's the same reason why William Rowe was an atheist. That's the sort of argument he approached. Now, I want to be very sensitive here, because not all Christians believe that this is the best of all possible worlds. Well, that's because not all Christians believe there is such a thing as a best of all possible worlds. So plenty of Christians would disagree with the idea that there is a best of all possible worlds. They say, no, that's nonsense. There is no best of all possible worlds. And so therefore, no. I would just argue back by stating that a world in which there is evil could potentially be a world that is better than a world where there is no evil. Now what we would have to do there is tweak, right, and change some of the conditions there. So yeah. Okay. What is a general description of God? He looks like us. God is masculine. God is a being. Where is God? Okay. Well, I don't think God looks like us. God is not physical. I'm not getting into like theological nuances in regards to talking very general here in regards to like the incarnation and stuff. I don't know what you mean by is God masculine. That would have to be qualified. I would say I wouldn't use that kind of language, like in regards to God being masculine or feminine. Now we have a masculine reference to God as a father, but I think that's a bit different, even though I think there are some places in the Bible could very easily be argued that God refers to himself in the feminine. Well, God is a being. Yes, God is a being. I'm trying to wrap my mind around some of these questions. Like a general description of God, I would say, would be something like, let me just state this. A eternal, non-physical, all-powerful, all-knowing, all-good being who is the creator and sustainer of everything that exists. Now, that's pretty rough. I'd probably add a couple of more things onto that, but I think that's at least a working model you can start with. God gave man free will. The world around us was mostly created by the hands of man, and some good, some bad. Look at the Mayans or the Roman Empire, for example. At some point, man gets out of control. Well, like what you're stating, by the way, and again, sympathetic and I understand it. It's not an answer. You're just stating the facts. The question's not what is there. The question of theodicy is why. Why would God do something like this? And whether we can have any pronouncements of judgment on God for allowing the things that God has allowed for. Right? So everything you've claimed, like I know plenty of atheists that would look at that and go, yep, that's true. And God, like even if they didn't believe in God, they would say, well, you're saying that God gave man free will. Okay, cool, granted. The world around us was mostly created by the hands of man. Cool, at least around us. Some of them are good and bad. Look, Mayans and Romans, yeah, sure. And people do get out of control. It's like an atheist would not necessarily find reason to disagree with you there. Maybe just God existing and giving you free will. But they can at least grant it. But it doesn't answer the question of why. Jeremy, because if there is nothing out of his plan and purpose, then can we make the autonomous choice to trust him or not? Yeah, so you're confusing. So Jeremy, with all due respect, I think you're committing a categorical fallacy here. Because something being in God's plan and purpose doesn't mean that God is actually controlling it or he's deciding it, right? So when I say that God, I would say has this general plan and purpose of accomplishing whatever he's accomplishing. And then we get to have freedom within that. But that doesn't mean then he meticulously, every single action that Arthur and Jeremy do is now planned and controlled by God. and therefore I no longer have I no longer have freedom in that. Yeah, I don't. If you have a response to that, I would love to respond to that. But it's having a plan and a purpose doesn't mean you control everything about it. Like, I don't know how that logically somehow follows. Like, oh, plan, purpose, and again, I get it because I know the counter arguments, but I don't see the logical connection. Normally, I would join at this time, drive into Bible study. Oh, normally, I wouldn't join at this time, drive into Bible study. Oh, we wouldn't want that. We're created in His image. Yeah, human beings are created in His image, but image language doesn't necessarily have to be. Remember, both male and female are created in His image, not just man, just about the masculine kind of thing. The other thing is that image doesn't mean like physically like Him. Is God a man or a woman or both? There's a fourth option there, none. God is neither a man nor a woman nor both. He is none. And it would be contradictory to say that God is a man. You mean male here, by the way. It's contradictory because males come into existence by the creation of God. Going to Rafi. Rafi, how do I live alongside loved ones who pretend to be close to Christ, yet you can see by their actions that they are truly far from Christ? Especially direct family members. Here, Rafi, I'll read a Bible passage for you because I think questions like this deserve just a very simple Bible verse. So Romans chapter 5 verse 8 says, "But God shows His love for us in that while we were yet sinners or still sinners, Christ died for us." Rafi, it's extremely important for you and I to understand, and those who claim to be Christians who are watching this to understand, that we did not ever deserve the love of God. And you will never do anything to deserve the love of God, because in any state that we find ourselves in, we do things that God doesn't allow for, that God is against, that I might even venture on to say that God hates. So when we ask ourselves the question, how can I live with family members who think they're close with God and they're not, or they're hypocrites or something like that, I would say, in what way did God continue to be patient with us and long-suffering with us while we were yet His enemies? Okay? And in that way, I would say, continue being patient and long-suffering with those, but speak the truth in love. Right? Like if you think that that is what's going on. Now, I'm very careful, by the way. Sometimes I hear Christians saying, man, my family member is such a hypocrite and they're fake. They don't really follow Jesus. And then I sit down and talk to the family member, and then I realize that they're normal. There's nothing wrong with them. It's just that that specific Christian individual has made certain issues so big where he thinks that if people are not following these things, they're somehow compromising. So you want to make sure that if it's true compromise in the true sense, like it's against very basic biblical teaching, then yeah, I mean, it's okay to call people out on that in truth and love, but that needs to be established before we can move on. How do you do that? You continue being patient with them, regardless if they're ever going to become believers or not. Because God is patient with us continuously. God is still patient with you and I whenever we do really, really dumb and stupid stuff. Hope that helps. Does the devil cause man to do evil? What's his role in it at all? No, I would say the devil doesn't cause man to do evil. The devil tempts human beings to do evil, or devils or whatever like that, but doesn't cause them. Cause would be too strong. There, it would be tempting. Hopefully not redundant, but have missed the beginning. How would you approach the why question? Well, the why question is actually approached in multiple ways. Now, again, you got to go back a little and watch that when you have some time. But not everybody, not all Christians agree on how we should answer this question. I want to put that out there. My personal response to it is that this is the best, at least for the time being, by the way. This is what my response is. It could change. That I think this is the best world that God could have created, given a number of conditions that I assume to be the case based on the Bible. Now, if somebody wants to take me on when it comes to those things, then that's fine. We'll have a biblical conversation there. Philosophically, I think it's sound. There's nothing wrong with it. The question would be whether people would think what I'm doing biblically is the case or not. Arthur, are you following the Ohio derailment? I've seen some videos, brief little snippets. I've seen some articles and stuff, but I can't say I am very closely. But it seems pretty bad, man. It's tragic. Correct. That would not be a Christian God. That wouldn't be God at all, right? That would be. I wouldn't call that. Look. One of the important things that when we discuss theology and we do theology is that whenever you're going to attribute this word God to a being, that would mean that being would need to be worthy of worship or worship worthy. Not just like, oh, look, a supremely powerful being, not like a really powerful being, and then therefore we're going to call it God. It's like, no. I know how we use this stuff, like, common kind of language. We call people gods, or he's the quote unquote God of basketball or soccer or something like that. But in serious discussions, both believers, unbelievers, atheists, skeptics, Christians, Muslims, like the first thing they do is agree on what they mean by the word, and then they go into the conversation. Buck, if you said if maybe God is a scientist and we're the experiment, he loves us but has no idea how the experiment ends, I would say then that's not God. That's just some other being that is more powerful than us or something, and that's about it. It's not God. Even if those beings, let's just say, or that being specifically, was the cause, the direct cause of the existence of humanity, I still wouldn't call that thing God. Because that thing is still finite. So me and the atheist agree here. This is Apologia Center, ladies and gentlemen, where Christians and atheists agree. You like that? My mom thinks Kenneth Copeland is amazing. And anything he says is true, and that she should send him a lot of money. I'm sorry. I genuinely am. I think these are individuals, people like Mr. Copeland, who've done this for many years. There are lots of Christians, and I'm very, very sure, by the way. Let me rephrase that. I can confidently say maybe that your mom is a very well-meaning Christian lady who, to the best of her abilities, tries to live a Christian life, and maybe to her detriment. And as is the case with many Christians, does it in a very simplistic fashion. Okay. Trying to be a bit careful with my words here. There's a difference between something being simple and something being simplistic. And in the midst of that comes across individuals who have the appearance, I would say, of godliness, the appearance of being biblical. And this is the case in the Bible, by the way. There's individuals like this, and there have been from the beginning, but aren't really the case. And yeah, I mean, I really would hope and wish that wasn't the case, but the reality is that is the case. That is very... And so my bone to pick, as it were, with some of those folks, Copeland, any one of them, whatever. Why am I forgetting that dude's name? There it is again. I should... tells you my focus got lost there a little bit. Dude from Texas, who... Why? I can't believe I'm forgetting his name. Oh, man. Help me out. Who's a really nice guy from Texas? What's his name? It's on the tip of my tongue. Joel Osteen. That's what I was thinking. Wow. That took a long time. Tells you how much of Joel Osteen I listen to. I forgot the dude's name. So yeah, like individuals like this, right? So Osteen, Copeland, these guys. And I just I look at them and I go, why do so many people listen to these guys? Well, I think it's partly because they attract and give into this simplistic way of thinking. Right. Oh, actually, I was watching Mike Winger respond to this the other day, and I'm just going to play a portion of this. But I want you guys to see this. I mean, there's a crowd listening to this man. Someone sent me this video a long time ago. I just never did a reaction to it because I was like, nah, man, like, I have a life to live. God. This is the first time I'm going to do something like this. So hang in there with me. Reaction videos. Okay, great. It's not up. Beautiful. Guys, you ready for this? This is something I discovered recently, and I put this together. What just happened? I don't know why that's even coming through. I was like, where is this? There we are. This guy is talking about baldness. Okay. Listen, this is what I mean by simplistic, okay? So we're going to see this guy's view. He's talking about beards, by the way. He's talking about how beards are evil. But it's that same sort of simplistic thinking. Okay, look at the stuff he says. There's a crowd. So, like, okay, let's logically deduce this somehow. It's like, what do you mean? No, there's audio. Oh, there's audio. That's impossible. No, what? Hang on. What do you mean there's no audio? Set the whole thing up, and I was like, man, it's good. Let me know if it kicks in. Okay, so whatever. I'll just tell you what's going on. Jeremy knows what's going on, right? Jeremy says this guy's apostolic. They denied the Trinity, say they tongues. Okay, cool, right? So I'm focused on the logic here. I don't, for the time being, in a part of this conversation, I don't care about his theology. The logic. So he says beards are a sign of pride. Like, you can't have a beard. He says you can't look like the world. Okay? He says you can't look like the world and then be like in the church. He's wearing a suit and tie. So let's just apply the same logic to that. Right? You can't look like the world and be in the church. You can't wear a suit and tie like them criminals, right? You can't wear a suit and tie like those political evil people who take advantage of the common man. You got to dress like Jesus. I'm very sure that if I came out and did something like that, everybody's got to look like Jesus, and this is how people dressed in the days of Jesus, and you guys all need to dress like that because that's what it means to look like Jesus. I would gain a following. Sadly, true. Very, right? Like this idea of like some, like, plus, and Mike Winger mentioned this in this video, but it's like the Bible literally, there's a prophetic word in the Old Testament talking about how they ripped the beards of Jesus like off. There are verses in the Old Testament where God tells his priests not to shave. We just read them. So God thinks a beard is not a sign of pride. He wants his priests not to shave. huh? Right? Like, if it's like, quote unquote, just a sign of pride, unless like it was okay in the Old Testament times and somehow it became like a proud thing. I'm just trying to explain the logic here. But you'd hear plenty of people amening hallelujah, X, Y, and Z. Oversimplifications, hasty generalizations, false dichotomies. Like, we can just go down the list, talk about the amount of mistakes this individual makes in his thinking, but yet there's individuals sitting there and amening, hallelujahing, saying yes, 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 X, Y, and Z. And if one of these individuals was a family member of yours and you went and talked to them, they would say, no, this guy's anointed of God. This guy's got whatever. Look at the passion he speaks with, and he can't ever be wrong. And that's sad. And that, what I've seen is that brings about a great deal of hurt in people's lives. Sad, but true. That's the reality. So, yeah, I mean, I'm saying that in the sense of like what takes place, and it's sad that we have family members and friends and loved ones that are connected to these individuals. And then so for me, I always try to take the battle to like gain the home field advantage by just focusing on the word of God and saying, hey, look, that guy's saying that, and that's not in the Bible. It's like not my opinion, his opinion. It's like, look at the way the Bible speaks about these things. But it's not always guaranteed that the person sitting across from us is going to agree with us. Sadly, that's the case. And that doesn't necessarily mean that they're not Christians. That could just mean that they're just not really sharp thinkers. We have to admit, and man, this is going to come out so bad. I think one of the things Christians need to admit is that just because you're a Christian doesn't mean you are intelligent. You'd be saved, but you could be as, right? You might not have the mental capabilities. Now, I wouldn't say like that's good. I would say every single one of us need to strive towards developing mentally, becoming more intelligent, smarter. And again, usually it's in these conversations where people say, what? You can become smarter? That's a sign of pride. And it's like, no. God tells us to love him with all our minds. That's intelligence. So, but the reality is that we're going to have people who are saved who aren't very smart, who don't know how to express things very well. This is why the Bible commands people and tells people, not all of you guys, or not everyone should, or those who want to be teachers should be careful, because you're going to be held to a higher responsibility, because you better understand the stuff you're teaching. Just not get up and randomly talk like this guy. If this guy gets the stuff on the beards wrong, you think I'm going to trust this guy on the Trinity? If this guy can't tell you the difference between whether the Bible says having a beard is okay or not, you think I'm going to trust his interpretation of the Trinity? No way. It's that simple. But that's the case. Yeah, I can sense the sort of individuals that your mom is enjoys preaching wise. But yeah, man, I mean, I don't know what else I can say there. So, Buck, one of the really cool studies I did when I was in Bible college did an actual study of the word image in the Old Testament, and then the multiple ways the word image is used in the Old Testament. There's a very cool thing happening in regards to like a cultural, it's like a flipped upside down sort of thing, is that you get idols who are all created in the image of men. So idols are created in the image of what? Like human beings, animals, reptiles, creeping things, right? Stuff like creation, in which in Genesis you see God creating humans in his image. It's like the opposite. You can think about human beings as being like little idols of God, not like the worshiping sense, right? but they're like him. Where in everything else, in regards to, say, the surrounding world of Israel, it's the opposite thing happening. So even in the literature, it's a very interesting way of thinking about it. It's not that anybody came up with a definition. What you need to do is observe the way the word is used within the general, like I would say within Genesis, and then within the general context of the Old Testament. This is why we need systematic theology books. Pick it up, like or a Bible dictionary. Pick it up, Old Testament dictionary, go to the section on image, read the 5, 6, 7 page article on there, and then you'll get a pretty good understanding of how image is. And again, because we can't just read a word and think we know the meaning to it when it's a lot broader. My husband says that Osteen is a great speaker. My husband isn't even a Christian. Yeah, look, I think he's a pretty decent speaker, but that doesn't mean he knows what he's talking about. These guys have positive affirmation messages that appeal to emotions, and then they say, send me money and everything will be good for you. The problem goes beyond that, actually. They teach a sort of thing of like you're investing into your health and goodness and well-being and all that stuff by sending money. That's where the charlatanism comes about, right? Correct, Jeremy. They are. I don't know what's going on with the audio, but I need to sit down and just retrace my steps and see how I can fix this. It seems to me that it's the same exact issue that I was having when it came to having someone come on the show live, and I couldn't get their audio through, and I don't know. I don't know what's going on. Have you heard anyone speak in tongues? I have. Sounds like gibberish. So yeah, I have, and some folks do sound like gibberish, maybe because that is gibberish. And then I also have where it is not gibberish. He really visited the barber. I don't understand norms in general, so I'm sort of with you, but you might not share my constructivist views. Maybe not, but that's okay. Did you just call my beard dirty? Buck, come on, man. He said, we all wish we had beards like yours. I appreciate that, man. I appreciate it. But I do need to get it, like, see, like it's getting out of control here. Like, I got to bring it back under control. It's got to submit. So no, it's got to, we'll fix it up. My barber's really busy. All beards are not dirty, man. I take care of my beard better than most people take care of their hair. I condition it. I do all sorts of oil it. You are of a different generation, Buck, so we'll forgive you for your generational judgmentalism. No. He's not trolling. By the way, I'm catching up on comments, guys. Do Christians think that? What is it that Christians think? Help me out. Okay, here we are. I mean, do they think that they're intelligent because they're Christian? No, but one of the things I've realized in the church, this is very interesting. It's hilarious to me. And I mean this as someone who's like I've given a sermon at church, and let's say I studied like 20, 30 hours to give the sermon. Right? Like I've gone through the passages, I've done my exegesis, hermeneutics work, I've read commentaries on it, I've read opposing views, whatever. Like I've done so much work in preparing for that talk. And then I've gotten up and given the talk and explained all of that, and then given what I would say, what I think is the correct view, or at least maybe there's two that are possibly like correct. And then you have someone like who comes up after the talk, who has no education, right? Like hasn't done the studies, hasn't put in the work. And it's not necessarily education. Like they don't need to have the education to go and put in the work and do the studies. Never read a book on the subject, never read 8 pages of commentary on a passage, and then just kind of like disagrees with your sermon and says, no, I think it's this. And then what they're saying is like wildly off, just like completely wrong. Nobody in the history of Christianity has ever believed what this individual is saying about that passage. Now, what they're saying might be true, like based on other places in the Bible, but not on that passage. And you're kind of like, no, but you try to be nice, but they just keep persisting, and you kind of go, bro, just because you're a Christian doesn't mean you know what's going on here. Like you do not know what's going on here because you have not studied this passage. And you listening to a sermon of me teaching for 30, 35 minutes, 40 minutes, and then somehow thinking you have an idea on this doesn't give you the right to just come up and be like, no, I think it's this. Now you could go and study and do the work and read a couple of books on it and then do, X, Y, and Z, and then say, well, here's what I think. But you see this quite a bit in the church where people just think, hey, I got the Bible, I got access to the Bible, therefore my opinions of anything in the Bible are valid. And I think it's really a humility issue. It's like, no, you don't. We all need to be humble, and we all need to realize that if we haven't put in the time to study, do the work, then we could be wrong about that. There's a certain Christian YouTuber that thinks that Christian women should dress like Muslim women, even when going to the beach. How do you think women should dress when they're at the beach? I'm not a big fan of bikinis. I don't like the beach, I should say, unless I'm fishing. Like I like going to the ocean to fish because I like fishing. But like going to the beach and stuff like that, I don't like it. Here's what I'll just say. It is interesting to me that, say you're like in a house, and this might get me in trouble. Say you're in a house, and you're in your, say, neighbor's house or something like that, or your friend's house. He's invited you over for dinner or whatever like that. And you got to go to the restroom. And you go, hey, man, where's the restroom? And he goes, hey, go down the hall, make a left. It's the door on your right. And you go and you miss a door. And you open the wrong door. And as you open the door, there's a lady in there wearing exactly what you would wear at the beach. Commonly speaking, kind of, and it's getting, in my opinion, it's getting a lot worse as to what people are wearing to the beach. She'd probably scream and yell and cover herself. But 2 hours later, that same woman will be outside wearing that same exact stuff, walking around, no problem. Everybody's staring at her. To me, this is like, I don't know, it's like cognitive dissonance or something. Like, I don't know what's going on. I don't know how to figure this out. Why you have that reaction, right? It's like you were surprised. That's about it. But there's no difference in regard, like they haven't seen anything you are not portraying to the rest of the world. So do I think they should wear whatever Muslim women wear? I'm not going to classify that. I generally think you can wear shorts and cover yourself and go to the beach. Now, the obvious response I get, is interesting, is folks saying, well, do you have the same standards for men? My response to that is, I think there's a very clear difference between the male body and the female body. If people haven't figured that out, they should. But as a matter of fact, I mean, for me, if I'm around people I don't know and stuff like that, I'll wear a shirt when I'm swimming, even at a pool and stuff like that. If I feel like, it's just unnecessary, I'll wear a shirt. I don't mind that. I'll wear those like swimming shirts, and I'm cool with that. It's just, I don't get this, like, it is not this justification of, well, I'm at the beach. So what? Yeah. If you have, yeah, I don't necessarily agree with this guy, but I would say like we've maybe lost a good amount of kind of like modesty when it comes to these things. Maybe modesty might be a word that a lot of people don't like, but I don't think it's a good enough thing to say, well, I'm at this location, so it's okay for me to do this. No, it's not. Just being there doesn't mean that it's okay for you to do that. You can be different. And I mean, it's very clear, I think, as we studied, like just look at history and like how people used to dress when they used to go to the beach. Were those not the same people? How did people dress when they used to go to the beach? And then how it's just become less and less and less and less and less and less and less. It's like, at this point, the next step is just like full nudity. Like seriously, the way some people dress to the beach is the next step is just being completely naked. And obviously there's places where that is the case. So yeah. Said report them for what? People are allowed to have wrong opinions. Correct. Or right ones. Almost everyone I know is a Christian, and almost none of them know anything about their theology, and most haven't read the Bible. That's very sad. Maybe that's what's led you to where you are standing. You got to hang out with some other Christians, man. Dude, if you're ever in my neck of the woods, I'll take you out for some good Armenian food. How about that? There's an invitation. That's always my luring thing. I tell people I'll take them out for like good Armenian food. Yeah, he might be some kind of a weird Old Testament legalist and stuff, but that doesn't mean what he's saying is entirely false. J Sharp just where is it? What's your view on tithing? So I don't think I should start here. I do not think that tithing is specifically taught in the New Testament. As a matter of fact, you can find one passage in the New Testament that teaches us this concept of tithing. What we will see in the New Testament is people giving. And the New Testament commands us to give generously. Tithing is a specific thing that happens in Israel, and it happens not all the time. Just a couple of times. There's also, it's tied in with taxes and religious taxes and so on and so forth, where that's not the case in the modern world or even in the Roman world of what's going on. But we see there's a command to be generous. There's a command to give without reluctance or grumbling. Now, if somebody might want to say, hey, look, there's this 10% kind of concept in the Old Testament, and I think that's a good concept for me to start my giving at, give 10%. And like it's like a loose rule for them and for others around them. I don't have an issue for that. I just wouldn't call it tithing. Tithing is specifically an Old Testament thing that's not repeated in the New Testament. As like the same thing with the Sabbath. Sabbath keeping is not in the New Testament. You don't need to keep the Sabbath. Now that doesn't mean you don't need to gather with believers. Very clearly, you got to gather with believers. As a matter of fact, I think the idea, we take the principles from the Old Testament. So we take principles of like, for example, when they bring their offerings, portions of their offerings go to the people who are serving them because that's their only source of survival. Now, I think the New Testament actually has a teaching in there that we ought to give a double portion of honor, or double honor, not portion, double honor to those who serve more. I think that's talking about finances. I think that's talking about caring for people who are actually serving the community of believers. Teaching, preaching, pastoring meaning counseling, meeting with people, praying with people, all that, whatever takes into, whatever goes into pastoring. And we should give them double honor, give them more, because that frees people up. And I think you come together as a community of believers and you say, hey, we need to care for those who are serving us. I mean, this is not, like, I don't know why this becomes a serious, crazy issue, for Christians in the church when they literally go to the restaurant and they will buy things and overpay because the chef prepared that same food they could have prepared at home with the same exact ingredients, but they'll overpay because the chef is serving them. They will pay for the service because the server brings them. And at the end of it, they will even end up tipping the individual because he served them. Because we understand the chef has to make a living, the waiter has to earn a living, right? Like everybody involved in that whole process has to earn a living and feed their families, and it's work. And for some reason, we throw this principle out, and this principle is a very biblical principle about fairness and fair pay, that you essentially take care of and give fair wages to the worker. And it should be the same thing in the church. It's like people serve us, and we ought to compensate them based on their service. What we do it is voluntarily because we're voluntarily in that context, and we want them to serve us. So we put our money together, and then we pay for that, and then we pay for, hey, we'd like to have a projector screen, or we'd like to rent this building. I mean, those things all cost money, and it's got to all come from the community. I don't think that we need to somehow, there you go, Jeremy, don't muzzle the ox passage, right, in the Old Testament. We don't need to somehow come up with some crazy like religious reasoning of like, if you give, you will be blessed tenfold or whatever like that, in order for us to be giving individuals who care for the needs of our community, including ourselves. Like, think about like what goes on YouTube. Like, some of you guys send like super chats. Some of you guys support me on Patreon. Why? Because you're essentially sitting there and saying, hey, I'm gaining something from Arthur. I'm learning something from Arthur. And he's putting in work. He's putting in effort. And I think I'm going to compensate him, or I'm going to bless him. Whatever kind of language you want to use, right? I'm going to encourage him. Because he puts in the effort. He puts in the work. And so here we go. And then when it comes to the church, we like freak out and go crazy. It's like, you don't need to have like, if you give $5, you're going to be blessed $55. You know, like, you don't need any of that stuff because it's not in the Bible. Now, the Bible does say that God loves a cheerful giver. The Bible does say that God will care for our needs. It could possibly even be the case, I'm very careful with these passages, that God might even bless you because of your faithfulness. Like, meaning that you have the ability and you're a responsible individual with whatever God's given you. And because you're responsible with that, he's going to give you more of that. That could even be the case. That's not always the case, but it could even be the case. So yeah, I mean, that would be my view on tithing. You'll probably read this comment way later. Look at that, we've arrived. But in regards to the bikini analogy, it's because that's what the woman is allowing people to see versus what she hasn't allowed people to see on the beach. Correct. No, I get that. But in regards to what is being seen, it's exactly the same. But I don't ever find it justifiable to say, well, I'm in this location, therefore I'm going to do this stuff. Because I think there's a great deal of other things that matter to that conversation. Like, I'll give you an example. My wife and I, we went to buy something, and then we went to fill up gas. This girl, like in her 30s, she was having issues with her pump, like came like in front of our car and went to the attendants to help her with whatever issue she was having. And I don't think she should have been outdoors dressed like that at all. Like, that was the way she should have been dressed at home when she's alone, say with her husband or something. If I was her husband, I would have never, ever been okay with her leaving the house like that. If I was her father, I would have never allowed her to leave the house like that. Now, yeah, I get it to a certain extent. You know, people grow and and they don't listen to their parents or whatever like that. Like I get that, but the interesting thing is that I don't think I've ever had to tell my wife, don't wear that because it like makes me uncomfortable. I'm blessed in this regard that she just knows how to dress well. There's no need for that. And so I'm very comfortable with the way my wife educates my kids and my daughter specifically, because I think those things matter. And I think there are things that should be private and there are things that should be public. This is not rocket science. Here's the funny thing, right? Like somebody told me to play a Dave Chappelle skit the other day that has lots of cussing, but I didn't. And I won't, but like, it could be the case that you go to someone who's dressed like extremely revealing like that, and then you ask them, hey, who'd you vote for? And they get all like offended because that's so like private, but they don't get that in regards to the way they dress, there's absolutely nothing private. Again, it boggles my mind. And I get some of this is a cultural sort of thing because I'm Armenian, but I don't really think so. I think I've thought through that stuff quite a bit to just realize I think there are things that are private. There are thoughts that are even private that you don't share. There are ideas, I would even say, that are private that you don't kind of throw out there just because it's a thought you had. You just say it anywhere. Like, no, man. And your body is the same way. Yes, I don't. Okay, let me read it. Yes, I don't think Christian women should wear bikinis, and certainly not a thong, a bathing suit, or a top that exposes most of their chest. But I don't think it's wrong to wear a one piece. Yeah, again, it really depends on it depends on your body. It depends on the way you're dressed. So a lot of things matter here, you know. You can be classy and look good. Or those skirt dresses that are made for the beach. Look, they actually make stuff like this for people. But usually it's, oh, everybody else is doing it, let me do it too. And I just think that's nonsense. But I certainly disagree that a woman should wear long sleeve and pants. Yeah, I don't know what that guy's talking about. Amen on tithing. Look at that. We're agreeing together, bro. Joyful givers giving generally in the New Testament. Amen to that. To be fair, Arthur, I was exaggerating at least a little. I don't tend to argue about theology and things with coworkers, in-laws, etc. because a lot of people get upset if the wrong thing is asked. That's fine. My offer for taking you out to Armenian food is still on the table. I mean, I wouldn't mind just going out and just hanging out. We don't have to argue. Sometimes it's really difficult to ask a thoughtful question without sounding like an ass. That's true. That's true. Trust me, I know what that's like. Some ladies enjoy the attention in bikinis, and a one piece leaves an awful tan line. I would then argue that those people who enjoy the attention might just have some other issues of security, and they should probably get it somewhere else, that attention. But sadly, that's true. Arthur is great, except his view of Calvinists. I don't have a bad view of Calvinists. Okay, it's not my view of Calvinists, it's my view of Calvinism. I have many a friend who are Calvinists. I have no issue of Calvinists. Calvinism, different subject. Sort of disagree, Arthur, and I think you might as well if you think about it. There are contexts in which we all accept certain attire is appropriate. So it isn't just that it's the location based. So generally I wouldn't disagree that there are places, whatever, you go somewhere where like, everybody's wearing a tux. Right? Like it's like you don't show up in shorts. I agree with that. I'm not very convinced whether the pool or the beach is that sort of a place where everybody just agrees this is the attire we're going to wear. I'm not convinced of that. I'm not convinced of the fact of the sexualization of the body. I'm not convinced of the fact that many guys don't go to the beach to stare at those women. Right, like very clearly, there's a lot of people that do stuff like that. So I'm not convinced of that argument. I would generally agree with you that there are places where certain attires are acceptable and not. But again, the answer, what I'm saying is, I guess I have a certain image in my mind in regards to what like a bikini is and stuff like that, and like what women are dressing like, where you can still look classy and dress for the beach in appropriate beach attire without having to expose every other part of your body. How do I know that? Because I've gone to the beach with Christians who dress like that. And I've never had an issue with that. You're sort of saying that certain attire is never appropriate despite the setting. Yeah, I would actually argue because of the different factors that would go into it. Like, look, even if I were to agree with you, let's just say I agree that the way people dress at the beach, we're generalizing here, okay? It's a friendly discussion. Even if I were to agree with you that the way the people dress at the beach is okay because it's beach attire, then I would say you need to make the beach like 18 and over or something. Like you can't take kids there. Because think about it. Think about the sort of stuff that we give ratings to, like movies and stuff like that, considering what's happening in those movies and dress and various things. Right? Like PG-13 or whatever like that. Like we don't allow people to watch movies of that sort, or, you know. And then now we're just going to take them into the public where everybody just dressed even worse than whatever they would be in that given thing. It's like for me as a parent, I think about those things. Like am I okay taking my kids to the beach? And just like exposing them to all sorts of different stuff. Like you have growing children, right? Like they're going through different stages. They're trying to figure out their own bodies. They're trying to figure out their own identity and all these things. And so you want to be a responsible adult in the midst of that and help them in learning those things without like shame and this and that, but also properly understanding that private things are private, public things are public, and you have a certain responsibility in these areas, and these things are okay, those things are not. I just don't think people think about this stuff. Okay. America is about Bud Light and bikinis. This is blasphemy, Arthur. Oh, I don't care if it's blasphemy or not to the American cultural norms. Why would I go to the beach without bikinis unless I suffer? You made my point, by the way. You very much made my point as to why people go to the beach, or why some people go to the beach. What's next? Cheerleaders in sweatpants? Have you seen how disgusting some comments are on Instagram of like 12, 13-year-old supermodels and the sort of stuff 50, 60-year-old men are writing under their posts? Like there's individuals that are going on those people's profiles, screenshotting their pictures, and then screenshotting the comments they've left under the pictures of 12, 13-year-old girls. That's the reality, guys. Right? Like you're talking about like cheerleaders in regards like no, again, I mean cheerleaders can be cheerleaders and like if everything is going to be hypersexualized, I have a problem with that. Like I don't get the concept of cheerleaders, by the way. I'm a soccer fan. There was what was it, like 3 years ago? There was like 3 years ago there was a soccer team in England that had like cheerleaders and stuff, and everybody was making fun of them. And like I just don't get it. It's like American sports that gotta have that stuff. But if we're just doing that because of, like, how objectifying to women is that? I'm not for that. Okay. It's a 12-year-old supermodel. Models. Maybe supermodels wouldn't be the right terminology, but models. These kids are modeling clothing and stuff like that. But it's like today I saw a video actually where I couldn't watch the whole video. I was like, you know, I was getting really angry. And the kid was 13, I think. And the account said, account managed by my agent, and then in parentheses it said, my father. Or it said father. And the comments under her pictures were insane. Yeah, I don't like this is a very difficult question because it's body dependent. Like there's individuals who dress gymnasts and stuff like that who dress just fine, and then there's people who I would look at and say what they're wearing is too small for their body. Okay, PT's seen it. Or not only all the parents of those models okay with it, they're supporting and encouraging it. Crazy. Yeah, I don't know what the deal with that specific situation was, but again, let's just say the parents are really bad parents. But I'm just saying, like, generally, you get a society. Do you think none of those guys like actually go to the beach to look at you, to look at your wife, to look at your daughter, to take pictures? Nowadays, they can take out their phone and secretly videotape every day. Like, do you think that's not okay? That's not happening? I'm just saying, like, it is not good enough for someone to come to me and say, but everybody does it at the beach. Okay. Yes, dude, again, I have one daughter. You got three, right? I have three daughters. Can't imagine doing something like that. Gross. Yeah. Like, dude, I'm telling you, I don't know how long this video was. It wasn't even long. It was like, I don't know, maybe like 3 minutes, 4 minutes. And I was like halfway into it. And I was like, you know, I can't. I'm done with this. It's making that video specifically is being posted and reposted on Instagram. I don't know what it's called, but somebody seems to have, PT seems to know what's going on there. Hey, don't worry. It seems like the way culture is going, that all this stuff is just going to be trans. So it's going to take care of itself, in my opinion. Like, straight guys are just not going to watch this stuff because there isn't going to be any actual women. I'm going to try something and see how this works. Okay. Specifically ending the stream on Twitch. And then we're going to end it on Facebook. Thank you, Facebook folks. Catch us on YouTube. Okay, I finally figured this out, guys. It took me a while. So we're just only on YouTube now. This is great. I think, PT, I think the Miss, what is it? The Miss Universe pageant was bought by a trans person. And so, yeah. How will you tell the difference if they pass as a woman? Yeah. It's a crazy thing, right? Like technology and surgery and all that stuff. And medicine is making this very, very difficult. The younger generation is going to have some serious stuff to deal with. Okay. Okay, that's good. I'd forgotten, by the way. I think one of the things I need to do is just like go into a stream and then on Facebook and Twitch and end it like maybe halfway through and send them over here. I have a 3-year-old and Dreader turning 45. You know, that's the reality, guys. I mean, we live every society. I think at any time in world history has had to, you know, deal with their own issues and talk about the ethics of it and the morality of it and all that. And we're no different. We just have different sorts of issues, especially as Christians. And for us as Christians, we need to think through these things really well and communicate those in regards to the way we're going to run our families and what we're going to expect of our children, what we're going to expect of our husbands, what we're going to expect of our wives, and communicate those well. And this is why for those people who are younger and who aren't married, or for those people who just aren't married, these are the conversations you want to have before you get married, because you want to marry someone who is in agreement with you. They might even be a Christian, but they might not be in agreement with you as to the way you parent, as to the way you raise children. Like, ask specific questions before you get married. The younger generation will be the fall of Rome. Too spread out, too diverse, too depraved. It's scary. Unless there's some sort of a revival. That is always an option in my mind. The next generation is really far off. I remember going to class today and seeing a woman wanting to be identified by every pronoun in the book. Gender politics is really confusing people. That's the younger generation. Plenty of trans women aren't discernible, not desirable. Plenty of trans women aren't discernible from biological females. People should just accept that these categories are constructed and aren't that important. Humans are weird. We can be friends. Humans are weird. I agree. We can be friends. I agree. I don't think there's anything in there where we cannot be friends or somehow we can conclude that we can't be friends. But to say that people should just accept that these categories are constructed, I disagree. They're not constructed. It's the way that we were intended on existing and propagating humanity. How are those constructed? And whether somebody can be discernible from a biological female or a biological male, it's a secondary issue. The issue here comes down whether there's a moral category on these things or not, or it's just like morality on these issues is just like whatever, like purely subjective. It's a Chinese or Russian plot to feminize all the men and make women masculine. Have you seen the latest eyebrow fish? No, I haven't seen the latest eyebrow fish. I don't know what's going on. Sorry, hang on. I hope Mike Pompeo gets the Republican nomination. You're not saying anything that I haven't heard, man. If that was a bit strong claim there, I understand, Arthur. It's just you're more than welcome to be here and have your stance. No issue. We're respectful. As long as you're not canceling me. What was I going to say? I heard a quote the other day. Where was it, man? It was some quote about like, if you want to, I'm going to butcher this. Let me try to Google this. But it was something like, if you want to ruin a culture, make full nudity acceptable for the following generation. Let me see who said that. Who do you guys think said something like that? Take a guess. Who do you guys think? Oh, yeah. Let's take some guesses. Don't look it up, guys, please. No, like historical characters, the Roman helmet guy. Maybe it might have been him, but I don't think so. It might have been somewhere else. Why don't we take some guesses as to who you would think would have said, if you want to destroy any nation without war, make adultery or nudity common in the young generation. Don't say it, Henry, if you know, don't say it. Oh, man. Big clue is the individual was not a Christian, but also was not an atheist. You think Europe is actually doing okay? I don't think Europe has been doing okay for a very long time. I wouldn't want to necessarily formulate my society based on the way European society is going. A lot of European nations have a completely negative birth rate. If it wasn't for the minorities in those nations, predominantly Muslims, they would not be replacing their generations. Okay, so individual who said this, what time period? I think it's the Middle Ages. Middle Ages should be fine. Okay, I'll just tell you who said this. It was Sahaladin, the Muslim caliph, I think that would be fair to say. He said, if you want to destroy any nation without war, make adultery or nudity common in the young generation. Now, this is a Quora question right here I just pulled up. It says, was Saladin right when he said, if you want to destroy any nation without war, make adultery and nudity common in the young generation? And what can we do about this problem now that it's pretty much a common thing? Hey, you said it was Muhammad. That's interesting. That's you got. Hey, that's for Sapere Aude. That's a really good question. This is a really good question. How long does it take? Does it have to take to destroy it for the claim to be true? Now, the question also becomes, what would that destruction look like? You know, you were, man. You were. Like, Saladin is famous, right? But yeah, I mean, when do we consider that a society has been destroyed? Like, it doesn't necessarily have to, like, no society really goes out of, well, I shouldn't say that. I was going to say no society really goes out of existence. And it's like, no, that's just not true. Cassidy said, I live in Europe and I don't think it's totally okay here. Yeah. Internet drug addiction, anxiety, and depression didn't come from a nudity. Or did they? I'm like half joking on that, by the way. Okay. Let's see. It's almost like a claim of the definition of a good society in a way. Sorry, I'm not getting the context here. What is almost like a... Did I miss something? So I did some horse riding yesterday, and this is so funny. My friend has a couple of horses, and we're at their house, and I rode one of the horses. I spent quite a bit of time riding it, and it was fun. And I didn't realize how sore you can get from riding horses. I mean, look, you can, your butt will get sore and your thighs and stuff like that. But I didn't realize how sore your arms and your shoulders get from riding horses. It's a workout, man. So, like, it's crazy. You want to lose weight, get a horse. Show pictures, he said. So if society allows those things, then it's a bad society. It destroys its status as a good society. I get what you're saying. Yeah, or it could be infiltrated or something like that, right? Show pictures. Let me see what... let me see which picture I want to show. I like this picture. This is a I'm very, very sore. That's a fun picture, guys. She's a really, really fun horse. Very pixelated. But very fun horse. You know, it's very interesting that you can build sort of a relationship. That's not a male. No, they're both female. I thought they're both female. Oh, no way. Okay, I've been corrected. Okay. Okay, guys, we've been on for 2 hours. It was pretty okay. I think a later stream was also okay. I'm not really convinced that I should change it. But again, just the thing is that, yeah, Mondays we got soccer practices, and I usually get home around 7:30. So even if we were, I'd have to get a replacement for that to do this. So with all that said, I want to thank you guys for hanging out and being here. I will see you guys tomorrow for our live hangout, and hopefully I can fix the audio situation so we can have people calling in. So with all that, God bless you guys. I hope to see you tomorrow. Be well. Thanks for the great conversations.